Imagine waking up tomorrow and discovering your entire week's work could be finished before Friday afternoon. Not because you're rich, not because you're lucky, because that is how humans lived for almost all of our history. Nobody told you that in school. For most of human history, work looked nothing like work looks today. We tend to picture prehistoric life as one long emergency, a desperate scramble from sunrise to sunset just to survive another day. But when anthropologists actually went to live alongside hunter-gatherer communities, they found something that upended almost everything we assumed about our ancestors. In 1963, an anthropologist named Richard Lee spent months tracking exactly how the Jew hoansi people of the Kalahari Desert spent their time. He counted hours. He logged tasks adults worked on average around 15 hours a week to meet their basic needs for food. 15 hours. Not 15 a day, 15 a week. The rest of the time was theirs. Nobody had told them they should be more productive. Now let me tell you about a normal day. Morning, someone checks if anything wants to eat them, not their phone. Them. Breakfast wasn't a meal, it was whatever hadn't escaped yet. The calories your ancestors consumed spent half their time plotting their escape. Roots tried to grow back. Fruit attempted to rot. Meat very aggressively became not meat. Dinner, in particular, had a complicated relationship with being eaten. Midday, the gathering is done. A woman sits in the shade, repairing a tool she already owns. No hurry, because there is nothing chasing. Her children weave between the adults, half working, half playing. Nobody separates the two. Decades later, someone went back to check if Lee was right. James Suzman lived among the same communities, and the numbers held. People gathered what they needed, and then they stopped. No surplus to store. No system rewarding you for trying harder. Suzman had a name for it. Sufficiency, not accumulation. Nightfall. A fire. 50 people, maybe more, settling into the dark around it. Complete silence, except for one voice. An old woman begins telling a story. No books, no writing, no screens glowing in anyone's hands. Yet every child listening tonight will remember this story for the rest of their life. Here's what's strange. Someone actually measured this. Daytime talk was practical. Complaints, coordination, the business of living together. But after sunset, the numbers flipped. Around 80% of what people talked about became storytelling, myths, memory, distant relatives, imagined journeys. 20,000 years before Netflix, a fire wasn't just warmth. It was where culture got built. What about the children growing up inside all of this? Imagine being 6 years old. Your grandmother hands you a stick. She doesn't explain anything. She simply starts a fire right in front of you and lets you watch. Tomorrow, you will try it yourself. Probably fail. Try again the next day. No one is grading you. No clock is running out. This wasn't unique to one tribe. Among the Hadza of Tanzania, grandmothers played an outsized role, feeding and supervising the youngest kids, which freed mothers to gather more efficiently and freed children to learn constantly, just never from a curriculum. Skills were absorbed through imitation and low-stakes trial and error. Ancient parenting was simple. If dad survives, do what dad did. Your homework was the same. Don't die. No pressure. And it's not just numbers from living tribes. The dirt agrees too. Sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa have produced deliberately engraved ochre and shell beads dating back over 70,000 years. Objects with no survival function at all. You do not carve patterns into pigment when you're one meal away from starvation. You do it when you have time, safety, and the mental space to make something simply because it means something. For tens of thousands of years, this rhythm barely changed. Then everything changed. Not because humans wanted more, because they planted one seed. Agriculture. It sounds like progress. It wasn't. Not entirely. Skeletal remains from early farming communities show more nutritional deficiencies, more infectious disease, and shorter average height compared to the hunter-gatherers who came before them. Farming produced more total food, but it also meant longer hours, riskier harvests, and diets built around fewer crops instead of a wide seasonal variety. Once a population grew to depend on stored grain, there was no walking it back. The 15-hour work week quietly disappeared, and it never came back. So here is the question. If your ancestors were working fewer hours than you, resting more, finding time to sit by a fire and tell stories every single night, what happened to us? Somewhere between hunting and gathering and clocking in at 9, the balance flipped. Agriculture demanded planting seasons and harvest deadlines. Then came cities, then factories, then offices. Each layer added new demands on your time while removing the built-in stopping point your ancestors always had. There is no harvest. Quota chasing a hoansi forager home at sunset. There is no boss standing over a Hadza child learning to start a fire. Work expanded to fill nearly every waking hour, and rest became something you have to schedule, defend, and occasionally feel guilty about. Think about your own week right now. Work bleeds into evenings through a phone that never fully turns off. Rest gets squeezed into whatever is left, often replaced by scrolling instead of the kind of storytelling Wiessner documented around those Kalahari fires. You have likely spent more hours this week staring at a screen than an entire hoansi family spent gathering food for the whole group. And yet, the exhaustion feels just as real, sometimes more real, despite the actual danger being nearly zero. There are no predators outside your window. There is no famine waiting if the harvest fails, and still something in you feels like it is running from something. All day, every day. Here is what I want you to remember. Earlier tonight, I told you your ancestors worked 15 hours a week. You probably did not believe me. That was the point. Everything we assume about prehistoric life tells us it was harder, darker, more desperate than anything we face today. But the research tells a different story. The research tells us your ancestors had time, had rest, had stories, had each other. The research tells us that sufficiency, not accumulation, was how humans lived for 99% of our existence. And maybe nothing is wrong with you. Maybe you are not lazy. Maybe you are not behind. Maybe you are simply living in a world your ancestors never evolved for. A world where work never stops, where rest feels like a reward instead of a right, where the food on your plate does not try to escape anymore, but trust me, it still wants to. So tonight when you lie down and your mind keeps running, remember the Jew/hoansi woman sitting in the shade, repairing a tool she already owns, in no hurry. Remember the old woman telling stories by firelight, and the children who will remember every word. Remember that, for 99% of human history, this was normal. And if 15 hours a week was good enough for them, maybe it is not a fantasy. Maybe it is just how a normal life was always supposed to work.